For the past 2 episodes, I've been asking asking people to call into the voicemail line with a response to the question, what do you like about the race that you are? Whatever race that is, what do you like about it? And, just give me your thoughts on that. I'm asking that in order to not so much run an experiment, but an exercise. I want to do a little exercise. And this idea came to me by reading about this exact exercise in a book called White Like Me by Tim Wise, excellent writer. His interviews of his have been featured on the show as well, speeches of his. And so what I'm going to do is actually just read, because he says it better than I could. So I'm just going to read from the book and sort of explain the exercise as we go. So he's telling the story of the first time he was ever in a group being sort of taught about anti-racism, and he and the group were all asked what they liked about being whatever they were, racially speaking. And he says, for most whites, it was a question to which we had never given much thought.
Hey, Jay, this is Mike from Lexington, Kentucky. What do I like most about my race? The fact that I never have to think about it. In fact, I didn't even have to think about it until you asked the question.
Looks of confusion spread across most of our faces as we struggled to find an answer.
Hey, Jay, it's Ty from Yuma, Arizona. So I don't know. I don't think that there is anything in particular that I like about being a white guy. I think it's just I am who I am, and I've never really thought about it.
Meanwhile, people of color came up with a formidable list almost immediately. They liked the strength of their families.
Hey, Jay, this is Aaron. My family always taught me that I was no different than any other person, no matter what their race was. It's because of this that I love my race, although I am not completely sure what it is.
The camaraderie, the music.
Hey, Jay, my name is Pablo. I'm Puerto Rican. I was born in Puerto Rico. I moved to the United States when I was 8 years old. I've been here ever since. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a bilingual household. Music was a big part of my childhood.
The culture.
When you think about your race, what people like about the race usually results to cultural identity.
The rhythms, the customs.
I'm proud that I come from a blending of many different cultures. I'm thankful that my family still celebrates all these cultures with different celebrations and holidays.
Their color.
Hi, Jay. This is Ben from Los Angeles. I don't take offense when somebody asks me my nationality. I am brown, and I mean really dark brown. What I am proud of, and that's the question, what I am proud of is that I'm not white. That's about it.
And they mentioned most prominently the perseverance of their ancestors in the face of great odds. When it was our turn, we finally came up with a list, and it was the same one offered pretty much every time I asked the question to white folks around the country.
Hi, Jay. Chuck, Salt Lake City. I like feeling secure because of my race.
Hey, Jay. This is Jake in Iowa. If I were ever to go to in front of a judge, I have a much better chance of getting say the sentence for the crime is 5 to 10. I'm more likely to get the 5. I got a pretty white name, so when I send a job application, I know it has a better chance of getting a call back. I'm about 4 times less likely to get busted for weed than a black person or other minority.
Hey, this is Philip from North Carolina. For me, I think it's believing that I could do anything I wanted to when I was growing up, that the possibilities were endless.
Hello, my name is Joel. I'm in Fresno, California. The thing about my race is that I don't have to defend it.
Hi, this is Steve. I'm from Richmond, California, but calling from elsewhere in the USA. Thought about it long and hard, and I came up with a lot of small answers, but they all boiled down to one thing. They were white privilege. Things are easy for me that are not easy for people of other skin complexions, other cultures.
We like not being followed around in stores on suspicion of being shoplifters. We like the fact that we're not presumed out of place on a college campus or in a high-ranking job. We like the fact that we don't have to constantly overcome negative stereotypes about intelligence, morality, honesty, or work ethic, the way people of color so often do. Once finished, we began to examine the lists offered by both sides. The contrast was striking. Looking at the items mentioned by people of color, one couldn't miss the fact that all of the attributes listed were actually about personal strength or qualities possessed by the participants, and in which they took real pride. The list was tangible and meaningful. The white list was quite different. Staring at the entries, it was impossible to miss that none of what we liked about being white had anything to do with us. None of it had to do with internal qualities of character or fortitude. Rather, every response had to do less with what we liked about being white than what we liked about not being a person of color. We were defining ourselves by a negative, providing ourselves with an identity rooted in the relative oppression of others, without which we would have had nothing to say.
Hey Jay, this is Jeff. I don't really know how to answer that question. I don't know what to compare it to. I've never been black. I've never been Asian or Hispanic. All I know is me. I know being white obviously has its benefits, but I don't know how one can really thoughtfully answer it without experiencing the other side. It's like asking what one's favorite food is without having tasted a number of different types of foods.
Without a system of racial domination and subordination, we would have been able to offer no meaningful response to the question. As became clear in that moment, inequality and privilege were the only real components of whiteness. Without racial privilege, there is no whiteness, and without whiteness, there is no racial privilege. Being white means to be advantaged relative to people of color, and pretty much only that. Our answers had laid bare the truth about white privilege. In order to access it, one first had to give up all the meaningful cultural, personal, and communal attributes that had once kept our peoples alive in Europe and during our journeys here. After all, we had come from families that once had the kinds of qualities we now were seeing listed before us by people of color. We had had customs, traditions, music, culture, and style, things to be celebrated and passed down to future generations. Even more, we had come from resistance cultures. Most Europeans who came had been the losers of their respective societies, since the winners rarely felt the need to hop on a boat and leave where they were. And these resistance cultures had been steeped in the notion of resisting injustice and of achieving solidarity. But to become white required that those things be sublimated to a new social reality in which resistance was not the point. To become the power structure was to view the tradition of resistance with suspicion and contempt. So while folks of color in the room would have dearly loved to be able to claim themselves the privileges filling the white folks' pages on the flip chart, we would have just as dearly loved to be able to claim for ourselves even one of the meaningful qualities mentioned by people of color, but we couldn't. To define yourself by what you're not is a pathetic and heartbreaking thing. It is to stand bare before a culture that has stolen your birthright, or rather, convinced you to give it up. And the costs are formidable, beginning with the emptiness whites often feel when confronted by multiculturalism and the connectedness of people of color to their heritages. The emptiness gets filled up by privilege and ultimately forces us to become dependent on it, forcing me to wonder just how healthy the arrangement is in the long run, despite the advantages it provides. Okay, so that's it for the book for a moment. And now if you're white like me, there's a really good chance that you're hearing a completely brand new perspective on the results of institutional racism that had never occurred to you before. And you, like I, until hearing this, probably thought that racism was, something worth fighting against just because it was wrong. And, you want to be an ally to those who are actually oppressed by racism. But I don't know about you. I had no idea how much I personally and, people like me had lost because of it. And so to wrap up with another real quick quote from the book, he says, "People of color don't owe us gratitude when we speak out against racism. They don't owe us a pat on the back. And if all they do is respond to our efforts with a terse 'about time,' that's fine. Challenging racism and white supremacy is what we should be doing. And resistance is what we need to do for us." So there you go. That is what flipped my world on its head last week when I read it. And, just to clarify a little further, obviously fighting racism is about, being a good ally and fighting for what's right just because it's right. But, the worst mistake one can make is to think that, we're fighting racism to protect those who are being oppressed by it, to help those who are being oppressed by it because maybe they aren't able to help themselves, and so on. It's important to do it just because it's right, and also to recognize that it hurts our own community. It's sort of a sickness in white culture that we need to get rid of it for our own sake, and doing it in that way and coming at it from that angle removes any suspicion that may be there that we're not doing it for the right reasons, or as as so many white missionaries throughout the centuries have done, gone into communities of people of color all over the world, told them, I have the answer for you, let me fix your life, and then things don't necessarily work out too well. So, if there's a suspicion built up there in communities of color from white people coming in trying to say, let me help you, that's perfectly reasonable. And so coming at it from a brand new angle just shed light on the subject like I had no idea was coming. It took me completely by surprise, and I knew immediately I had to share it with you.